If you've spent any time editing videos, you already know how much of a grind it can be. Trimming down raw footage, cutting out filler words, balancing the audio, digging through music libraries. It's the kind of work that can eat up hours before you even touch the creative side. And here's the thing, in 2025, AI is no longer just a buzzword in editing. It's become a real tool set that can cut out the busy work, streamline your process, and let you focus on the part that actually matters, telling the story. The shift is pretty dramatic. Just a couple years ago, AI in editing felt gimmicky, like a fun filter or a novelty. Now, it's powering serious tools that professionals and creators use every single day. And if you're not taking advantage of it, chances are you're wasting time on things that an algorithm could have handled better and faster. That's why today I want to walk you through 4 AI tools that are changing the game for video editors. Each one tackles a different stage of the process, from the first rough cut to the finishing touches. Some are genuinely time savers, while others have limits you should know before jumping in. By the end, you'll see how AI can fit into your workflow, not as a replacement for creativity, but as a partner that gives you more time to be creative. Let's start with the first tool, which focuses on something every editor dreads, the rough cut. Rough cutting a video is where a lot of people lose patience. You've got an hour-long recording, and before you can even think about the story or the visuals, you have to hack away all the dead air, the repeated takes, the ums and uhs. That alone can take forever. Gling is built to handle exactly that. You drag your video into the platform, and in just a few minutes, it spits out an edited timeline. Filler words, gone. Awkward silences, cut. Sudden pauses that break the flow, smoothed over. It even handles jump cuts in a way that feels natural, so your audience doesn't get distracted by jarring transitions. One of the most impressive features is the automatic captioning. Not only does it generate subtitles, but it also aligns them accurately to the speech, saving you the trouble of manual syncing. On top of that, it can generate chapters automatically, breaking your long content into digestible segments. For YouTubers or educators, that alone is a massive time saver. And here's the kicker. Once you've got that AI rough cut, you can export the entire project into editing software, like Final Cut Pro. That means you're not locked into the AI's choices. You can polish, tweak, or restyle everything with your usual tools, but without slogging through the boring part first. That said, Gling isn't perfect. Its extra features, like background noise reduction or AI-generated B-roll, sound good on paper, but don't always deliver. The audio cleanup can feel a bit heavy-handed, and the B-roll suggestions are hit or miss. If you're hoping it will finish the edit for you, you'll be disappointed. Gling is best thought of as a rough cut assistant, not a full editor. Still, if you've got hours of raw footage piling up, Gling can chop it down to something manageable in a fraction of the time. It clears the path so you can spend more energy on refining and storytelling. Now, once you've got a cut that makes sense, the next hurdle is adding the elements that bring it to life. Music, voiceovers, maybe even some extra footage. Normally, this part is fun creatively, but it can also be a time sink. Hunting through endless libraries of stock music, trying to match the vibe of your script. It's not glamorous, and it eats up hours. That's where Artlist comes in. You might already know Artlist as a platform for royalty-free music and stock assets, but lately they've been rolling out AI-powered features that make the process smoother. For one, they've added AI-generated voiceovers. You paste in your script, and Artlist can read it back in 13 different languages, plus 4 English accents: American, British, Australian, and even Indian English. The voices aren't flawless, but they're natural enough that most audiences won't notice. If you're a solo creator who doesn't want to record your own narration every time, that's a huge help. Beyond that, the platform uses AI to recommend tracks, sound effects, and even stock footage based on the tone and content of your script. So instead of scrolling endlessly through options, you get a curated set that actually fits your project. The strength of Artlist is speed. Instead of spending an afternoon building out your soundscape, you can have something solid in half an hour. And if you've ever struggled to find that just right background track, having AI narrow the choices feels like a lifesaver. But here's the limitation. Artlist isn't a full editing solution. It's fantastic for adding polish, music, voiceovers, visuals, but it won't manage your clips, handle scheduling, or build a content calendar. In other words, it makes your edit prettier, but it doesn't make your workflow easier. If you're already drowning in footage and deadlines, Artlist alone won't solve that problem. That's why I see Artlist as a complement rather than a core tool. It smooths out the creative add-ons, but you'll still need something else to actually keep you consistent. And that brings us to the real question. If Gling helps with rough cutting and Artlist helps with polish, what about the massive middle ground? The everyday challenge of turning long recordings into content that people will actually watch and share. That's where things get interesting, and that's where a tool like Vizard completely changes the equation. Okay, so we've handled rough cuts with Gling, we've dressed things up with Artlist. But what about audio quality? Because let's be honest, nothing kills a video faster than bad sound. You could have the sharpest visuals in the world, but if your background music is blasting over your voice, or if your audio levels are all over the place, people will click away in seconds. That's where Auphonic comes in. It's an AI-powered audio mixing and mastering tool that takes care of all the technical stuff most creators don't want to deal with. Here's how it works. You export your audio tracks, separating your main voices from background music or sound effects, and upload them to Auphonic. The platform then automatically applies noise reduction, balances the levels, and sets everything to broadcast standards. So your voice is always clear, the music never drowns you out, and the whole mix just sounds professional. Auphonic even lets you choose a target loudness, like 16 LUFS for podcasts, which means you don't have to fiddle with meters or compressors. The AI figures it out for you. It's not flashy, and it won't magically make a bad mic sound like a studio, but as a finishing tool, it's incredibly practical. Think of it as the polish that makes your work sound pro, without you spending hours tweaking EQs. That said, Auphonic is very focused. It's all about audio. If you're looking for help with video workflows, scheduling, or clip generation, it won't do that. Which brings us to the tool that, in my opinion, ties everything together. Here's where things get interesting. Because while tools like Gling, Artlist, and Auphonic each solve one piece of the puzzle, Vizard solves the part that eats up the most time, turning long recordings into short, viral-ready content, and actually managing the posting process afterward. If you've ever uploaded a podcast episode or a live stream that runs over an hour, you know how overwhelming it is to cut it down. You've got gems hidden in there, funny moments, mic drop quotes, emotional insights, but finding them manually takes forever. With Vizard, you just upload the full recording. The AI scans everything, identifies the highlights, and automatically generates a set of short clips. These aren't random cuts. They're chosen based on pacing, emotional peaks, and conversational flow. The end result actually feels like an editor sat down and handpicked the best moments, and the clips come out ready to post. Vertical format for TikTok or Reels. Done. Captions synced automatically. Already there. Need square format for Instagram? No problem. It's like having an assistant who understands not just editing, but also platform requirements. But here's what makes Vizard different from other clip tools. It doesn't leave you with a folder full of files and say, good luck. It takes you all the way through to publishing. With Auto-Schedule, you can set your posting frequency, say 3 times a week, and Vizard handles the timing for you. With the content calendar, you can see every clip laid out, track what's live, and move things around with drag and drop ease. If you manage multiple accounts, you can keep everything in one dashboard instead of juggling 5 different logins. Think about how that changes your week. Instead of recording a podcast and then sinking another 4 hours into editing and scheduling, you upload once, and by the time you're done grabbing coffee, your next 2 weeks of content are essentially done. And here's the kicker. Vizard doesn't just save time, it keeps you consistent. Most creators fail to grow because they burn out trying to keep up with posting schedules. Vizard automates that grind, so you can focus on recording and engaging with your audience. Compared to other platforms, the difference is clear. Gling handles rough cuts, but doesn't touch publishing. Artlist helps with polish, but won't manage your workflow. Auphonic nails the audio, but only the audio. Vizard is the only tool on this list that feels like it was built specifically for creators who want to stay consistent without hiring a whole team. So there you have it, 4 AI tools that make editing faster and smarter in 2025. Gling trims the rough edges, but its extras can be hit or miss. Artlist adds polish with music and voiceovers, though it doesn't manage your workflow. Auphonic makes your audio sound professional, but it's limited to just that. And Vizard, the one that doesn't just help you edit, but actually keeps you on schedule, producing clips that are ready to go and making sure your audience always has something new to watch. At the end of the day, AI isn't about replacing creativity. It's about removing the bottlenecks that slow us down. And if you're serious about growing an audience, consistency is everything. That's exactly what Vizard delivers. The ability to show up again and again without burning out. So if you've been curious about how AI can fit into your editing workflow, give these tools a try. But if you're looking for the one that makes the biggest difference week after week, Vizard is the one I'd bet on.